These are the original wheels that we found on the bike. That it slides in there very well. In fact, we have a little room to play with. Next job on the Super Sport is the front fork, as you can see here. So I've measured out here 210 cc to be put inside here. So let's do that. So, welcome to another video here at Back to Classics, and today is part 2 of the 1974 Ducati 750 Super Sport or Greenframe restoration as we have it underway. You saw in a previous video when we rebuilt the engine, not just this engine but in fact another one as well, because we're restoring another one right at the same moment here at Back to Classics as well. In fact, there's also a third original Greenframe here within our workshop at the moment. So it's a lot of Greenframes going on, but this one is well, it's the furthest in terms of the restoration process. And as you can see, we have received a lot of parts back from painting, chroming, zinc plating, etc. To now actually start and get the restoration of the rolling chassis going as well. So that's up for today. And we'll take you along this process. Okay, so let's first discuss the frame and the additional parts for that. In fact, the frame, as it came off the bike when we started the restoration, was in very good condition, better than we usually find. All threaded lugs, all was in good order, so no real jobs were done there, except for a few holes that were drilled at some point here in this bracket and on this side as well, that we filled with welding before we send it off to be painted. Now, the frame was original. We found the original paint underneath a coat of red paint. It was very cheaply applied at some point in its life's history. We know about that. It was probably before 1980 already when it was painted red, and it was done in a, well, like I said, a very cheap manner. Just a rattle can with red paint, and the bike was painted at that stage. So, well, obviously we need to address that and take it back to the original shape and colors as it was delivered by the factory in 1974. So that's what we done here. A few years ago, we found a new old stock frame, a Greenframe, that had the original paint from the paint shop at Ducati at the time, and that is how we color matched our paint recipe with that frame. So we're now able to continue that recipe on all future 750 Super Sport restorations, and we know for 100% sure that the color that is applied on this bike is 100% correct. So that was done, newly painted as you can see. It has also been prepared already with all the thread cleaned out, new bearings in the headstock. So the swing arm has been prepared as well to fit a new pin for it to pivot on, as well as the rear ends where the chain adjuster goes in and out. That's already been prepared. So this frame is as good as it can possibly be. Also the homologation plate, the original homologation plate that you see here has been fitted back. We were able to get it off undamaged and put it back after painting. We never leave that in place because it's impossible to paint around it, of course, and certainly impossible to paint underneath it. So that's also what we have achieved on this occasion, and it is now ready to go over the newly built engine. The wheels as well, a lot of preparation went into these. These are the original wheels that we found on the bike. The wheels, specifically the Borani 4777 type with the inscription that is used on the 1974, is specific for that year. So you can imagine with so few bikes built in 1974 that it is next to impossible to find these wheels if they're not there. So we were lucky enough to have these in this occasion fitted to the bike already. Now the wheels, as it came off the bike, they had been relaced at some point with stainless steel spokes, which are not original, and we were able to find a set of original Alpina spokes that are just plain steel but painted gray. And well, we have newly painted these spokes and put it all back together into the original outer rim, the Borani outer rim that was newly polished, as well as the original Grimeca hubs that were also polished from the outside and blasted on the inside, and the original bearing caps for the rear wheel and the front. So it has all been put together and prepared for the final stages when we put it back on this bike. So that about the wheels. The fuel tanks, you can see here there are two fuel tanks made for this bike. One is the original fuel tank that came with the bike originally and has been repainted as well with the rest. And we also supplied a new fuel tank. Now you might wonder why that is, and that has all to do with the fact that these are fiberglass fuel tanks. And fiberglass has the tendency to not be very compatible with modern fuels, especially ethanol that is added to modern fuels. And the ethanol, what it does, it eats away on the resin that was originally fitted to bound the fiberglass of these original fuel tanks. And well, what happens over time is the fiberglass becomes weak and it sort of disintegrates when there's fuel inside that fuel tank. So this being the original fuel tank that came with the bike, we advise not to use this anymore, because if you put modern fuels in there, it will disintegrate and it will become well, hopeless at some point, and we're unable to repair the damage that is done there. So luckily the tank is in good condition, but it is best kept on the shelf as a part of the bike's history, as it is the original fuel tank, of course, but kept aside. So that is why we have this new fuel tank made. These are fuel tanks we make in-house. These are made from a mold taken from a original fuel tank, so the shape is exactly the same. I would suggest spot the difference between these two fuel tanks. But the only difference is, in fact, that the resin used to make this fiberglass fuel tank is resistant to ethanol. And that is why we like to use these on finished super sports that are actually driven, because here you have the possibility to actually fill it with modern petrol without having to deal with the resin disintegrating. So this fuel tank will actually be fitted, and this fuel tank will be kept aside with the bike. So you might wonder why there are no decals applied yet on these fuel tanks. That is original in the fact that the Ducati did the same. They had these fuel tanks painted. There was a clear coat over the paint, and on top of the clear coat there was a water slide decal applied that said Ducati and Desmo on either side. And we will replicate that on a later stage when the bike is nearly finished. We have all the water slide decals available to put them back on, just as the factory did in 1974. So that's up with the fuel tanks. We have a lot more parts came back from the paint shop that we can go into now. So something to say about the seat as well. Seat is again the original seat, unmolested, undamaged. We were able again to repaint it and take it back to the original condition. But what is remarkable, something that almost never happens, is that we were able to retrieve the original seat cover from the original seat. Now it might look a little bit aged, which it is, of course. It is from 1974, but we are able to reuse this to fit it on the seat that we have repainted. And that is what we're actually going to use. There is some work to do here. Remove all the old glue that was used to fit the seat to the seat unit, and we're also going to make new. We're going to use new foam, because this is over time this becomes a little bit soft, and apart from that, the part that goes in here is completely missing. So we will be able to reupholster this seat to its original specifications. So, first job is to get the frame over the engine, and as you have probably seen on a previous episode, before we do that we need to prepare the engine to take that frame, because it is quite a tight fitment. So we're going to remove for now the carburetors and the outer covers of this engine in order to get the frame mounted on the engine. So that's the first job. Engine has been prepared, the frame has been prepared, so we're now ready to mate the two, actually, to put them back together as they were for all their life. But of course after a full engine rebuild and a full paint job. So that's up next. For restorations like these, we like to use the original nuts and bolts that were used by the factory. And we have a supply, short supply, but it's quite limited of course, a short supply of these original nylock nuts with a yellow insert. These were used by the factory back in the day, and that's also what we're going to use when building up this motorcycle. So that is going right here. Next job, to fit the swing arm. Now that's all been prepared for the pin to go in. So the bronze bushes in there are prepared. And what I also have here is a set of these washers. In fact, they're shims. And these are used to fill out the gap between the two points where the swing arm pivots. And as you can see here, when I slide it in, the position is going to be that it slides in there very well. In fact, we have a little room to play with, and of course that there's no tolerance there. It should be set at 0, so that it doesn't move about when driving this bike. So that's up next. So I initially put the swing arm pin in place, and the swing arm of course, to see what the play is on the swing arm. And you can see here that I can move it about a little bit, and a little bit too much. So we're going to use a pack of shims to adjust that. Of course, this can only be measured when the engine is fitted to the frame and the bolts are tightened, because that is what actually gives that size, and also how many shims are needed. So let's try if I can do this package here. probably do the job. Yes, it does. So now we're going to fiddle these in. Ha! So now we have put these, the shim package here in place, and as you can see there is no play left. So this is actually set at 0, and that is exactly where we want it. Of course, without it being too tight, because I can move this about the way it should. And of course, when the shocks are fitted, that'll hold it in place and make sure that the handling of this bike is as it should be. So, job done. So, next job is the assembly of the rear shocks, original Marzocchi shocks. Very hard to find, because these are also specific for the 1974 Supersport. So, well, we have it all laid out. We got some new parts as well. New rubber top cap, well, in fact all new rubber parts, as well as a new seal. And all parts are nicely polished, newly zinc plated for the top caps. The spring and the adjuster are the original paint still. These are in beautiful condition. We'd like to keep it that way. I've also, as a preparation, fitted new eyelets in the top and bottom of the rear shock. And well, we're now going to assemble the whole thing. Basically, it's an oil-filled shock, obviously, and what it does on the rebound is mostly done by the spring, but the compression is mostly done by the hydraulics inside. And what it actually does, it uses a piston inside this sleeve, creating pressure when the piston is pushed down from the resistance from the oil. So that is basically how it functions. So let's get cracking. Okay, so now we have to place the seal inside this this holder. For that we need a little bit of special grease. There we go. Okay. So now we have here this plate. That is the holder of the shims. And these are quite delicate. These actually will prevent the oil from running through the piston. You can see probably there are some tiny holes in there where the oil needs to flow through. But of course we need to look for resistance when the oil actually goes there. So that's a special order of shims. Mount it this way, and then we have the piston on top and a nut to secure it all. Okay. Now we need to slide the piston inside the chamber, the sleeve. Of course we have to compress the ring. There it goes. And now comes the shocks oil, already measured up the quantity. And we can screw the top cap down. Okay, so let's see what it does. And you can see already I have to really work this thing to get it up and down, which is a good thing. That's what we want. Perfect. Okay, now the final bit is to assemble the spring. So first the adjuster, make sure that's the down position, so it'll compress a little bit easier. Then the spring on top. Now comes the hard bit, and that is to slide these in. That's one. And two. There we go. That's one chock finished. Okay, so let's close up the engine again. Now that it is fitted to the frame. Hey Grover. Next job on the Super Sport is the front fork. And as you can see here, it's the complete left and right front fork that is now going to be assembled. Every part has been prepared, cleaned, some new parts as well, obviously new seals in each of the fork legs, a new O-ring for the top cap, and some minor things like the fiber washers and an aluminium washer to hold the oil inside. But other than that, all original, all just cleaned and ready to go. As you can see, the fork legs themselves, they have not been repainted. It's the original paint from back in 1974. Now there are some minor things here and there that is caused, it had some damage over the years, but very minor. And we felt it appropriate to leave it in place and just to show a little bit of the bike's history and patina, if you want to call it that. So let's put this all together. So first we're going to fit new seals inside the lower fork legs, and for that our trusted, hope you can see that, special grease for new seals. So let's put a little on there. There are two seals in each fork leg. Many of these old Marzocchi and also Siriani front forks. Two on top of each other. And push it all the way down as far as we can go. That's one in. That's it. And now this clip can be put in place. Okay. That's one done. Next job is to fit this damper rod with all the shims and the bushes in this fork stanchion. And well, you have to bear in mind what the exact order of the different parts is. But this, like in the rear shocks that we showed you earlier, this part of the front fork is actually where the oil is prevented from flowing and making this resistance with the, especially with the rebound of the shock. So that is the damper rod. It slides inside like that. Then there is this special thrust washer that goes in like that, as well as a bush and a larger bush. Now this larger bush is actually what's holding it in place. Get a screwdriver and fit that back in there, and it should stop just where the circlip has to be mounted. So let's get our special circlip. There we go.
And obviously we need to hear click. There we go. Now always check that the circlip is inside the groove the whole way around, which it is. Very well. Which means that we can now also fit the lower fork leg. Don't forget this. There we go. I always fit the spring inside as well, so we can have a little bit of pressure from this side, making sure that the damper rod goes in all the way down before we can actually mount this screw. There we go. Now, in order to tighten the screw here at the bottom, we need to hold the damper rod inside. And for that, I once made a special tool out of an old socket with two bits on either side to hold the damper rod inside. So let's get that in. There we hear it clicking. And now we can actually tighten it up. Okay. Here we have our fork in the making. So before we put any oil in there, it's obviously a good idea to make sure that the drain plug is closed. So new drain plug, new seal. There we go. And now we can start with the assembly from the top. First the spring. So final job is to fill the shock with oil. For that we always use Mold Tool as a E20W fork oil. It's a heavy fork oil, which is good for these old type of front forks. Modern front forks use much thinner oil, but this works the best with the old style Marzocchi original front forks. So I've measured out here 210 cc to be put inside here. So let's do that. Now on top of the spring is a extra bush to increase the preload. So we put that back, and then there's the top cap as a final bit holding it in place. So what we need to do now is press it down while making sure the screw catches the thread, and there we go. There we go. So that's one complete side of a front fork, which actually works. Beautiful. So that is the front fork now completely done and fitted to the bike, as you can see here. Engine fitted, the rear swing arm, and the rear shocks, as we showed you before. And it's now time to continue with the bike's electrics. But that's for our next episode. So obviously there's a lot more to be done on this bike. We'll now continue with other bits like the electrics, the headlamp, all the other bits that need to go on there. But for now we'll call it an episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. And we'll definitely be back with more about this 750 Supersport Greenframe from 1974. So be sure to follow our YouTube channel, and be sure to subscribe so you get notifications as soon as we get a new video uploaded. So for now, thanks for watching. Toodaloo-dokey. See you next time.